Hey folks, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. Hope you're doing well out there. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 different ways that you can develop and resource yourself that have nothing to do with psychedelics or with therapy. Since this channel focuses very much on psychedelics and therapy and personal development work and the intersection between all these things, I thought it would be interesting to kind of take a break from all of that and spend a little time focusing on the positive here and talk a bit about different ways that you can resource yourself and get perhaps a broader picture overview of what it means to really be well resourced. So if that interests you, please join me for the conversation. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing well out there. So a little bit of context here, as I like to do before I go ahead and get into the major talking points. I want to make this video for a couple reasons. First of all, there's been a lot of interest around this idea of regulation that I've been putting forth and how to self-regulate. So this is the beginning of a larger answer that I'll be creating about self-regulation. And so I wanted to kind of create this video to set the tone for that. I also wanted to, quite frankly, make more videos that kind of veer towards the positive and look at the developing of our capacity for positive emotions, positive states, positive feelings, because I know a lot of my content does tend to focus on problems, on issues, on heavy topics like trauma and, emotional processing, stuff like that. And while I think of all of that as incredibly important and fascinating, to be honest, I think it's also really important to take a break from that and to look at this, this process we're in of healing and transforming and growing and developing ourselves outside of just the lens of pathology and issues and problems and things that need resolving or healing, and also look at it from the angle of positives, of growth, of well-being, of thriving, of developing the best, of expanding our capacities and really feeling good. So, the other thing I would add here is that I feel like I've just seen a lot recently of negative content online and kind of fear porn and bad news, and things look dire and hard, and there's lots of negative predictions out there. If you're online at all, listening to any of the talking heads, or quite frankly, even just watching the news, watching media, like Netflix or whatever, there's just so much dark, negative, pessimistic content out there. And so I wanted to offer a bit of a series of videos that offer some optimism, some positivity, some hope, at this moment in time, because I feel like it's quite frankly always useful, but especially kind of in these darker winter months. And, it kind of aligns with the spirit of Christmas, shall we say. So without further ado, I want to get into this list of 10 things you can do and work at that are avenues into feeling much more safe and resourced and much more built up in terms of your sense of well-being. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And by the way, these are all in no specific order. These are just 10 things that I think are kind of big pieces or big movers or big domains or areas that you can explore that tend to resource us really well. So number one here is going to be perhaps one that's a little cliche. Some of these will definitely be cliche for you, but I think they're of value and worth exploring. And that is a gratitude practice. Okay, so if you look into the neuroscience of gratitude, if you look into the science of gratitude, and you work at developing a sense of gratitude on a daily basis, this can have a profound transformative effect on your life. It can really ratify and strengthen any of the things that are going right in your life because you're bringing your attention back to them regularly. It can strengthen relationships and people and connections you have that perhaps you're deeply grateful for, but haven't really been acknowledging or letting it really land how much meaning or how much power certain people have in your life in a positive sense. Gratitude practices can really help to just create more of the positive neurochemicals like serotonin and dopamine, more excitement about possibilities in your life, or more of a sense of connection to what is right and what is good. See, the thing is, as human beings, we tend to take for granted or filter out our attention from anything that is kind of stable and going right and balanced and ongoing. And that could be people, that could be aspects of our living situation, that could be aspects of our day-to-day life that are so implicitly normal, that we don't even think twice about them. But if they were not there, it would be devastating or transformative or shocking, right? So gratitude practices really connect us to this awareness. And I think it's just such a wonderful, wonderful thing. Every time I go through a cycle of doing my gratitude practices, I just find that overall life is much more positive, much more affirming, and my ability to really reach into my neurology and feel my body light up with a yes is so much easier. So you can kind of think of this as, strengthening your awareness of the things that are going right. You can think of it as developing and strengthening the neural paths of appreciation, of feeling good, of having, of enjoying, right? Because these are all things that we tend to, again, be biased against in favor of novelty, in favor of being aware of what we don't have or what we want or what we need or what we think we want or need, which is often not always what we actually want or need. The other thing I'd say about developing gratitude practices is that it really does just deepen your ability to deal with stresses and struggles, because you're much more in touch of all the resources you already have. Gratitude is profound, and it really is one of these things that I don't think you can have too much of. There are certain emotions you kind of want to be careful of. For example, excitement can spill over into like mania, for example, right? But gratitude is one of these emotions and one of these states you can never practice too much of. You can never have too much of. It keeps you humble. It keeps you connected. It keeps you kind of nourished emotionally, fulfilled emotionally. So I would strongly, strongly recommend, if you don't have a gratitude practice, to play around with this. This is a great way to begin to feel more resourced. And again, look into the science of gratitude. There's significant science around this. This is a very real, practical, profound way to feel more resourced. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one on our list here is something that I think often gets kind of dismissed or overlooked or kind of tossed aside, especially as we're adults dealing with adult issues and adult problems and adult stresses in life. Or we kind of just think of it as something that is really something for kids and maybe for teenagers. But, when you grow up, this is something to set aside. And I strongly disagree with that whole kind of line of thinking. And this is play. Play is another massive way to get more feelings of feeling resourced in your life. So when we play, there are tons of neurochemicals that are released into our body that are incredibly healing, like dopamine, like serotonin, like oxytocin. It sharpens your ability to be adaptive, to be attentive. It reinforces curiosity and exploration and learning new skills, learning new things. It invites creativity. It invites, if you're in some sort of play with other people, it invites collaboration. Invites connection and, constructive relating and relationships. Play has so much involved in it. And, I think at a much more basic level, when we have more play in our lives, we have a feeling that there is really a way out of the stress and out of the pressure of life. And we have a feeling that life is much more balanced, that life is much more easy, and that there is something exciting and juicy and meaningful to do in our lives outside of, the basic survival things of, work and money and, self-care and, maintaining our close relationships, which are all incredibly rich and rewarding and, parts of feeling resourced too. But play really, really is a deep need. It's always amazing to me to see, having been like in the festival community and the burner community and the psychedelic community, obviously, and things like this. So amazing to see people, who are, maybe middle-aged or even elderly, who, finally get a chance to try out one of these experiences in one of these festivals and discover adults around them playing. And what it feels like to be in an environment of people playing. And play, could be whatever it is to you. Play could be just doing, puzzles, if that's your form of play. Or play could be, rough and tumble like wrestling, or, playing with animals, playing with dogs, or, play could be all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of different forms of play. But just thinking here, when I just finished that thought, when I see people, who are adults who have spent a lot of years not playing, carrying a heavy load, dealing with a lot of stress, being really responsible, finally get a moment to be in an environment where they have permission and even encouragement to play, it's transformative and profound and beautiful in the best way. So I would say if you're feeling under-resourced, this is another major thing to look at and explore and not be dismissive about, not just be like, yeah, whatever, I could play, but I don't figure it out. Find something that's fun, that's enjoyable, that's interesting, that you're curious about, that get play in your life. It's so important. Okay, on to the next here. Okay, the next one here is pretty much the polar opposite of play, and equally as important. And, I think for most of us, if we had fairly average childhoods, these were kind of the two of the major polarities. And the other side of this from play is, of course, rest. And this is another one that shockingly a lot of adults really struggle with. A lot of us really have a hard time giving ourselves permission to really unwind, hit the pause button, turn the volume down on life, take a day off, take a night off, take a weekend off, or 2 weeks off, or whatever it is, and rest. Really actually rest. Allow yourself to be nourished, go inward, sleep in, eat clean, nourish yourself with things like, going to a spa, for example, and getting massage, or going to a hot tub, or having really chill social time with some people that you really feel comfortable with in a very relaxed way, maybe like a Sunday brunch that's super mellow. Rest. Time off from all the energy expenditure and all the output. To be fair here, I am an introvert, so I'm biased towards, retreating inward for rest, whether that's being alone or being at home. I do think rest could equally be extroverted things like going out on a long, slow walk with a friend, or there are other ways to be restful for extroverts too. But the idea is to take down the energy, chill out, give yourself permission to just really soften and lighten things up for a period of time. I think this is so incredibly important to feeling balanced, to actually, restoring your energy so that you have the ability and the kind of the resources to actually create a lot of output and do big things in the world. I think this is important in terms of feeling a sense of balance in life and safety in life, so that you're not just revving your engine, into the red, just constantly going as hard as you can and then burning out, which a lot of people do. I think this is an important thing. Some of us never got this modeled, so it doesn't occur to us as important, but it really is. And so I would encourage you, in terms of resourcing yourself, to get play, to get rest, right? We'll kind of review these at the end, and I'll kind of make some commentary about the whole list here, but maybe you're starting to see a pattern already. So let's talk about the next one. Okay, the next one on the list here is, again, I think massively underrated. I think all of these are quite frankly underrated. And really, again, these are all ways to resource yourself. And this one is huge no matter who you are, including if you're a serious introvert, including if you're someone who suffers with social anxiety and struggles with feeling anxious around other people, like I know a lot of young people do, but not only young people, of course. And that would be to socialize. It is so important to socialize. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for this. There's a lot of different angles for this. The studies on this are clear. I just heard a statistic today that the biggest predictor of longevity of life over all the other things, exercise and smoking and diet and all that, is how many close connections you have in your life with other people, right? And I know we're in a time in the world where more of us than ever feel lonely, isolated, disconnected, don't have good connections. And so this becomes more important than ever, honestly. The double-edged sword with socializing, of course, is that people are often the source of our wounds as well as a resource for us or a point of connection, right? And so the nuance here that I would add, which is not really a nuance, it's actually fairly obvious, but the point I would add is that for socializing, it needs to be socializing mostly, let's say, majority with people that feel safe to be around, where you can be yourself, where you can, if you're a bit awkward or, a bit silly or goofy, or something about you makes you feel a little concerned, like, oh, people are, not going to get me. Find people that do get you. Socialize with people that don't care about whatever your quirks are. Socialize with people who can just meet you and enjoy, or, share a shared interest, or whatever it is. But we want to socialize. Let me just give you a little more context here on this. There's a lot of information out there on the importance of socialization. Couple things. First of all, the more I learn about self-regulation and the different inputs for self-regulation, the more I'm convinced that one of the major powerful inputs for regulating our nervous system is relating. So when we have good relating around us, this is a powerful, powerful regulator. The other thing I'd add here is that, oh, that's what it was. I just forgot for a moment. The other piece here is that from a polyvagal perspective, polyvagal theory perspective, which, I think it's fair to question. It's debatable how valid this is, but let's just kind of entertain the idea. The idea in polyvagal theory is that we have different layers to our nervous system, where, let's say, our body's kind of focus or energy, or let's say blood flow, can go. And depending on how stressed we are, we move through different parts of our nervous system along our vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in our body. Okay, so that's kind of the fundamental there. Now, in polyvagal theory, when we are regulated, when we are at our most balanced and alive and safe and comfortable, we're actually in our what's called the social nervous system, which is the frontal vagal, as far as I understand here. So when we are social with other people, even if we're not talking about our issues or processing anything, we're just hanging out, even if it's kind of superficial, and we are just using our facial expressions, listening, engaging, and actively present with a person in a dynamic relating outside of ourselves, this has a regulating effect on the nervous system. So even just for that reason, it's a little bit perhaps self-centered to go socialize so that you could feel regulated. But people do this, like, if we're going to be honest, people do this all the time. This is a normal part of being a human being, that one of the motivators for going out is self-interest. It's not only, altruistic and for the other. So go out, socialize, interact, use your social engagement system, and it will regulate you. So that's that. Another big one here, which if you are a fan of Andrew Huberman, you're probably already well aware of, is getting proper light exposure, right? So this means getting sunlight on your skin on a regular basis. This means getting out as soon as you wake up and going and standing outside for 2-3 minutes in the morning, and allowing direct sunlight to enter into your eye. You don't have to look in the sun, but allow sunlight ambiently to get into your eyes. Same thing at night at sunset. The reason for this is that these reset your circadian rhythm and balance out your melatonin production and like a whole cascade of hormones here. So light exposure is another huge piece of feeling regulated. Obviously, for anyone who lives in a northern climate where it's cold and cloudy a lot in the winter, we have, there's seasonal affective disorder, et cetera, right? Light matters. Light is a major input to our nervous system. It is super important, not something to dismiss, not something to neglect. And by the way, just so you know, with the Huberman thing about stepping outside and getting light into your eyes, you have to be outside. You can't do it through a window, because the window actually blocks the rays that would enter into your eyes and stimulate your brain and your nervous system in the proper way. So this is something you actually have to go outside for, which I think is ultimately a good thing. But the bigger point here is get more light, get light exposure. I also think, you see behind me, mostly just because blank walls is boring, I have these colored lights behind me. I have to be honest, like, just having colored lights around has been really nice too. And so if you have an ability to have colored lights in your house, or mood lighting in your house, if you're not into colored lights, I get it, it's not everyone's aesthetic, Or if you're able to go out to a concert where they have a cool lighting, I think that matters too. I think getting exposure to light is really important. So this is another way to regulate yourself. These are all things that if we don't have them right, will negatively impact us. So again, these are ways you can resource yourself. So light exposure, believe it or not, it's huge. Okay, the next couple on the list here are fairly standard and really almost annoyingly common. If you're talking to any sort of doctor or wellness expert or, dietitian or anything like that, but I'm going to cover them here because they are major ways of being resourced, right? So the next one here is sleep and getting quality sleep, right? Now, I don't want to be preachy because my sleep is not perfect, but it is much better. In general, here's what I know about resourcing yourself through sleep. You want the deepest sleep you can get so that you wake up well rested and energized and balanced and ready to go, right? There are a lot of little tweaks and hacks you can do to improve your sleep. Some obvious examples here is sleeping with an eye mask or with blackout curtains or something that makes for a very dark room with no LEDs on in your room when you're sleeping. The reason for this is even with your eyes closed, you are sensitive to light. Your brain is sensitive to light, and it can mess with your circadian rhythm, how deep your rest is, right? So you want dark room while you're sleeping. I use an eye mask for that purpose. You also want to, of course, sleep in a room that isn't warm or isn't too warm, right? So of course we want a warm, cozy bed, but you don't want it so warm. If you've ever tried to sleep like I have here in New Mexico in the summer when it's hot and you don't have AC for whatever reason, you'll know it is brutal trying to fall asleep when it's really hot out. There's a reason for that, right? So another thing you can do is make sure the temperature is cooler when you're going to sleep. Of course, no screen exposure for 2 hours before bed. And then another huge one here is making sure that you are breathing through your nose as best as you can so that you get deep, well-rested sleep. So this is something I've been exploring and playing with and experimenting with by doing what's called mouth taping, where you literally use a small piece of tape and tape your lips shut at night so that you have to breathe through your nose. And I know this sounds wild, but again, there's science on this. Go look it up. The idea comes from doctors, not from just like woo-woo, random weird people. And the idea is that I believe we get more nitric oxide when we breathe through our nose. And if you tape your mouth shut, you rehabituate your body to open up your nasal passage and breathe through your nose at night. I've been doing this for about a month now. My sleep is shockingly better. I pop awake, quite early these days at like 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. sometimes. And I feel energized and ready to go, well rested, mentally focused, mood up, almost like not really too much energy, but almost, compared to how I used to wake up through my 20s and 30s, which should have been my best years, so much more energy. So I would try all of these little tweaks, all of these little things to improve your quality of sleep. It's going to have a major difference on your cortisol levels, on your ability to be present with other people, on your ability to stay mentally alert and sharp and focused, on your ability to stay calm and much more centered, because you feel your body has more strength to it. You feel stronger. And this is, one of the ways of thinking of feeling resourced is that we feel stronger, that we feel more capable, right? So when we feel more capable, we generally feel safer, right? So this is a huge one. Please, if you're struggling with your sleep, this is a big one to get right. I'm sorry if this is preachy. I realize you probably already know this if you're dealing with this, but it's worth putting out there. And for any of you who don't think that you struggle with your sleep, I would even encourage you to try to optimize it further because it can only benefit you. So enough said, sleep is a huge one. Okay, and next on the list, in terms of things that are so annoyingly obvious, you've heard them a million times, and why are they even on the list, is diet, right? So this is another one here that, again, I want to acknowledge. You all know you should eat clean. But I think some of us don't really fathom how much not even a poor quality of diet, because that's one thing, but even like just a so-so quality of diet that isn't as balanced or clean as it could be, when we're using kind of standard grocery store foods, a lot of us really don't fathom how much this can impact our mental health. Right. So there's a point I've made on the channel before, and it's a point I make to clients on occasion when I need to, which is that if you're not controlling for the physical ways that you could be negatively impacting your mental health, in other words, the way your diet, your sleep, your exercise impacts the way you feel, then how do you know if what you're dealing with is physical or psychological or emotional? You don't until you've controlled for these very physical factors, right? And diet is the most obvious example of that, right? So I remember when I first went paleo for the first time, which was, well over 10 years ago. It was shocking how much better I felt, how much more energy I had, how much more focus I had, how much more strength I had, sense of well-being and emotional well-being, right? This is the thing. A lot of us don't realize that when we have gut inflammation, that can be a driver for depression in a really profound, significant way, right? If we have other physical health issues, for example, let's say we have methylation issues, which is a common genetic variation, a common gene variation that a lot of people have, where they undermethylate or overmethylate. And this can also add to anxiety issues in a really big way, or other cognitive functioning issues. So diet impacts so much of how you feel, but not just how you feel in terms of energy and focus, but emotion, right? I was shocked when I removed carbs and sugar, how much of the angst and the sadness and the heaviness and the drama and the low mood that I had just disappeared over the course of a week. It was just gone, right? So diet's huge. And this is another way you can really resource yourself. And, don't get me wrong. I, still have my indulgences. I understand what it is to not always want to eat clean or to really enjoy not eating clean. I get it. But I would encourage you to begin to increase the quality of your diet if you've noticed it's kind of slipped off track, which I think it does for all of us from time to time. This is one to really keep good, and it makes a huge difference. As a counterpoint to this point, though, I will say I've also seen, a lot of people, especially in the New Age movement, that go crazy in the opposite direction, where it's all about, smoothies and, probiotic this and green drink that and kale smoothies and cleanses and blah, 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 to try to fix what is obviously not a physical thing. That to try to fix something that is actually perhaps more psychological, more relational, more of a developmental issue or trauma or that kind of a thing. So the other side of this coin is, when you control for this, it's not a guarantee that everything is going to get better and all your issues are going to go away. But you want to have this right so that you're clear about the difference there. And again, this is a major way to resource yourself. So please, if you've, I know it's annoying, I know it's repetitive, I know we hear it all the time all over the place, but if you haven't really worked at upgrading your diet and getting a really clean diet with just really simple, fundamental basic foods, I would encourage you to at least try an experiment of that for 3 days and see how it makes you feel. Okay, enough said, getting off my soapbox about that. Let's talk about the next one. Okay, so another one that I'm a huge fan of here that may be a little unexpected for some of you is supplements. Now, as I've gone through my healing journey and I've worked on, what are psychological issues and emotional issues, and also some health issues that I've had, moving into my 30s and now into my 40s that I've had to deal with and kind of sort out, I've discovered how amazing supplements can be to really help. And so this would be another huge thing to look at. If you need to feel resourced, I would encourage you to consider not just meds and medication and hardcore pharmaceuticals, but just look into different supplements that can support you around some of the things you need, whether this is feeling a bit more relaxed and unwinding at the end of the day, whether this is feeling a bit more alert and cognitively sharp, whether this is feeling a bit more comfortable socially. Shockingly, there are supplements that can really reduce social anxiety, or whether this is just about overall feeling great and strong and healthy and really positive in your body. Supplements have gotten me through some tough times where no amount of self-regulating techniques or self-hypnosis or any of the tricks that I had at the time could get me through. They've really helped in a pinch more than once. And so I'm a big fan. I could, if you're interested, absolutely do a whole video on supplements that I think are worth exploring in terms of, helping yourself feel supported and healthy and balanced. Happy to do that. I'm not an expert on it though. Let me be clear. I'm just, a casual student trying to sort out my own things with supplements along the way. So I could also, not do that video if you guys don't care to hear about it. But anyways, check it out. Check out supplements. A lot of people don't realize what's out there and what these different substances and supplements that are fully legal can do in terms of improving our mental and emotional well-being. And some of these, just spoiler alert here, pair really well with psychedelics to minimize the potential for a negative experience, a quote unquote bad trip, kind of set you up with a extra little stack of positive feeling in your body, in your neurology, if you're going to be using psychedelics. So that's a whole other topic. Again, happy to do a video on that too. But yeah, if you're not hip or exploring supplements as a way to feel resourced, I would encourage you to do so. The only caveat I would add to that is, understand anytime we're using a chemical means to feel balanced and resourced and right, that is a diminishing returns thing because we have hedonic adaptation. In other words, our body gets used to it and builds tolerance, and generally we need more and more. And just implicitly, it ultimately doesn't make sense that we need to consume an external thing in order to feel right, if you're catching my drift here. So over the longer haul, you don't want to rely on supplements to be your mental health management strategy. I don't think this is the whole picture or the whole solution. And I'm really skeptical of people who are just like, yeah, just take supplements and all of a sudden my, issues go away. And that's wonderful. In the short term, it's understandable. But, when your body is balanced with whatever it is that it needed, that perhaps it was deficient in, it may not work anymore. So supplements are awesome. They have their place. I see them more as kind of a short-term, acute, balancing agents to help us feel right when we're not feeling right. But I don't think they are in and of themselves a complete strategy for the long haul. I hope that's clear. Okay, next on our list here is something that is so obvious that a lot of people miss it, or it's something that people hear about. And again, it's one of these things that they feel didn't work for them, doesn't work for them, or is a little annoying because it's so repetitive because you hear about it a lot. But there's more than one way to do this. And what I'm talking about here is breath. Okay. Now, breath work and using breath to self-regulate is a huge tool. It's all of these, quite frankly, are huge tools. But this is perhaps the most immediate access point into modulating and shifting your nervous system, and is profound in its implication. There's plenty of science to back up that doing different breathing techniques is very real and does create very effective actual changes in your physiology, in your nervous system in real time that can help you swing out of, say, fight or flight mode or out of dissociation and back into a much more balanced parasympathetic kind of social nervous system functioning, right? So I would encourage you to explore different breath techniques. I do have a playlist here on the channel of self-regulation techniques that I've pulled from other channels just to kind of, sometimes I'll send it to a client or just recommend to people. So please look through the playlists here on the channel, and you'll notice that in this self-regulation list, there are a bunch of different exercises that you can do. And one of them is, or more than one, there's a few different types of breath techniques there. There are a bunch I've learned along the way that I think are really interesting. So like coherence breathing, for example, box breathing, for example, just doubling your exhale to inhale ratio. These are all profound. I pair a lot of these with hypnosis to take people into very deep, profound states. These are also one of the major tools to regulate yourself through challenging, hard moments on psychedelics. It's a classic cliche in the new age psychedelic community for a reason, that, if you're really like going through a moment, you slow down, you tune into yourself, and you breathe through it, and you get through those tough moments. So if that's true when you're talking extreme altered states of consciousness, this is also going to be true for moments of stress in our life, moments of overwhelm, moments of challenge, etc. Learning different breath techniques to control your physiology is a major, major tool. So I would strongly recommend, if you've never explored it, or if you're a bit, skeptical and critical of it and whatnot, I would encourage you to open your mind and give it a shot. Again, this is a major access point into well-being and feeling more resourced, especially I think in acute moments where we're really overwhelmed, we're really stressed, we're really not feeling resourced. Breath work is huge. Okay, so please explore it. And last on our list here, but certainly not least by any stretch of the imagination, is touch. Okay, now touch is a big topic, and I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert on touch, that I'm some genius about touch, and that I'm super well versed in all the deep nuances of touch as a modality for working with people or for healing. I'm not a body worker, et cetera. But I've been fortunate to have been exposed to a lot of very positive, safe touch. So I want to share a little bit about my thoughts about this with you guys. So touch is a complicated topic for a bunch of reasons. One is that obviously along the way, a lot of people have been through experiences in life, where we have had unsafe touch of some form or another, and that's really not ever okay. And it's really unfortunate when that happens in our lives, right? Touch is a very basic primal means of human connection, right up there with socializing, talking, sharing food together, sharing time in the same place together, right? These are all very primal animal aspects of being human, and touch is right at the center of that, right? And I understand, why this can be a contentious topic for people. Another major thing for a lot of us is that, unfortunately and sadly, a lot of us never got proper touch, enough touch, early on, or quite frankly, for our entire lives. It's really blows my mind. It's really shocking how many people I know who, haven't really been touched in, safe ways from friends, for example. They don't have touchy-feely friends, or they're not in a friend culture of hugging and touching each other. From, loved ones, from family, being cuddled as a kid, for example, or, playful touch, rough play touch, for example, as a kid, or, in our intimate relationships, touch was always maybe tied to conditionality and conditions, and was never just about the safe exploration of touch as a force of healing and connection in our lives. Now, what I found, in my experience, again, I was really lucky to be raised in a family where there was a lot of safe touch. Thank goodness. That was one thing that went right for me. And then I was also lucky to kind of fall in with a bunch of new age hippies and a lot of like body workers and, massage therapists and, rolfers and acupuncturists and acupressurists who do a lot of like touch with, that kind of thing. And just in general, I fell into a friend group of people who were very body centric, body aware, and into using touch in very, safe, of course, very consensual ways that were healing. And so I've been really lucky in this sense to have had a lot of good touch in my life. And it really is, even just a good hug from someone is so profoundly resourcing. It sends a signal, not to your brain, not even to your emotions, but directly to your body that everything's okay, that you're safe, and that you're connected. And, again, I don't mean to make anyone sad by talking about this. Hopefully this doesn't stir you up too much hearing about this, but I would just encourage you, if you can get safe touch in whatever way you can get it, whether this is, again, hugs from a friend, or, you're involved in martial arts, maybe that's not safe touch, or, or going and getting massage on a regular basis, or if you're lucky enough to have people who can give you a long hug or who want to cuddle you, or whatever it is, get safe touch in your life. It makes such a profound profound difference in terms of resourcing yourself. Again, not at the cognitive level or the emotional level, but at the deep neurological level, attachment level of our body, right? So this is another way to get resourced that's just so rich with depth and with meaning. And, last thing I'll say about this, since my channel is primarily about psychedelics, is that this is an interesting topic when it comes to psychedelics and psychedelic therapy. There's a lot of taboos. There's a lot of issues of consent. There's a lot of issues of touching someone as a therapist or a guide when the person is in an altered state of consciousness. All understandable, and I think really good discussions to be having. The other side of that coin, though, is having been in the underground community for a long time around psychedelics, there's also a lot of play around touch and a lot of exploration of touch, not necessarily even like a sexual, sensual way, but in terms of, again, body work on psychedelics. Profound, right? Yoga on psychedelics, profound, right? Acro yoga, which is a whole thing, or ecstatic dance, or contact improv, or just playing, acrobatics, these kinds of things, using your body, right? And using your body collaboratively with others, dancing. It's a huge one, right? These are amazing ways to tune your nervous system and create a lot of healing. And, I'm just got to say, I'm super grateful for my exposure to a community where that was a part of the feature of the community. It's really shaped my life in some pretty amazing ways that I don't think I even fully understand yet. So anyways, last one here is touch. So let me just summarize all of this and then we'll call the video done. Okay, so a couple quick comments I want to make here, and then we'll wrap the video here. So first thing I want to say is that, these 10 things I've listed out here are not the only ways to resource yourself outside of psychedelics or outside of therapy. They are just 10 ways. They're not the only 10 ways, right? So please consider other ways that you can feel resourced. And there may be ones that are more particular to you or more particular to a community or culture that you're connected to, or your friend group or way of doing things. There are all kinds of other little, nuanced other ways of resourcing yourself out there, and big ones, so I don't want to come off as if these are the 10 ways. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying these are 10 ways. That I would encourage you to explore, that, shockingly, when I'm having conversations with clients or friends or people who are new to psychedelics, et cetera, so many of the people I'm meeting are underexposed, underdeveloped, or under-exercised in these areas of their lives. These are all areas where we tend to not be optimized and make huge differences, right? I want you to know, when it came to this list, I really gave thought to this. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea for a video. 10 ways you can resource yourself. Awesome. And I really ran through all kinds of things. I brainstormed about this, right? And I was trying to just be really honest with myself as I went through that process. And I landed back at these 10 things as being huge things to mention. Now, the other side of that, and I've kind of alluded to that here in this video in multiple segments here, is that I'm also very self-aware that this can seem a bit preachy or pedantic or a bit obvious and therefore a bit annoying that I'm telling you, play, gratitude, sleep, rest, socialize, yada, yada, right? You may not want to hear these things. I realize that, but I'm mentioning them because I do feel like they're really, really important, okay? The other thing I think is striking about this list is how many of these things are basic fundamentals of life, right? These are things that, when, at least when I was growing up, things may be different now for kids that grew up in the last 20 years, but when I was growing up, play and rest and socializing, light exposure, sleep, these were all normal, right? These are all standard parts, I think, of being a human and of being alive. And, none of these are fancy or complicated or esoteric. They are the basics of life. And, what's so striking to me is at the same time, we fall out of alignment or fall out of practice or fall out of experience or never got the experience around these real basics of life. And then we wonder why we feel dysregulated, right? And so this is a huge thing I would encourage you to just think about is, maybe some of the dysregulation you're dealing with is just because your life is out of balance because you're not kind of being a well-rounded human being, engaging all of these things, which are, if we're going to be honest here, very biological, evolutionary inputs for well-being, right? So one of the things I've started to discover over, the last 20 years of my life is the more I live in alignment with ancestral ways of living as human beings. This means more in alignment with hunter-gatherer kind of models of living based on most of our evolutionary history, the better I feel. And this includes diet, this includes sleep cycles, this includes movement, all the things I'm listing here, essentially, right? The other thing I'll just kind of add as a thought here is, from my time in the New Age community, all of these are huge in the New Age community. And I know the New Age community is cringe. I know that it's a hokey, it's easy to make fun of. It's easy to look at and go, gosh, these people are just obnoxious, especially when you're looking at these really like wealthy, super privileged folks on Instagram who, are traveling the world or going to Burning Man all the time or these kinds of things, right? I get it. It can be a bit gross, right? And these people it's easy to dismiss what they have to say, right? But I think that there's a reason why these have become, evergreen features of this kind of conscious, awakened, psychedelic informed lifestyle, right? I do think that for all the criticisms we could say about the New Age community, that in general, there is an intuitive, implicit gravitation towards a healthier lifestyle that these people understand at some level and embody at some level. And I think that's worthy of respect. I think that's actually something to be curious about or learn from rather than be dismissive of. And so I think it's really interesting that all of these, gratitude, play, rest, socializing, light exposure, good sleep, good diet, taking supplements if you need to, breath and breath work and touch, that all of these are major features of what you'll see from anyone who's kind of involved in the New Age community and in any sort of kind of, ongoing way, that these are common building blocks of that lifestyle, right? I think there's something to learn from that. Okay, enough said. I realize this ended up being a longer video than I anticipated. So if you're made all the way to the end here, thank you so much for watching, as always. And please do me a favor, do all the YouTube things, the like, the comment, the subscribe, the yada yada. If something here resonated for you and you disagree or you agree, or you want to add a point or add a whole other, bullet point on this list to make it 11 things or 12 things or what have you, please leave a comment down below. It's always super beautiful and juicy and meaningful to engage with you as an audience. So much love to you. I really appreciate your time and your attention of taking in this video. And I hope that, this is a helpful, uplifting, positive reminder of ways you can resource yourself. Okay, enough for now. Take care.